Marvin Gaye and Marvin. Thanks again for joining us. This has been a wonderful experience for all of us, and thank goodness it's not over yet.
Well, it's very nice to be down. I'm surprised I'm here. You know, not surprised I'm on your show that I'm out performing again. I've got I'm in a good frame of mind now, and I think I want to perform this year, and I want to go out and let the people see me, the people who have supported me so well and bought my records and everything. I think I'm ready to perform now.
So then you'll be doing concerts all over the country?
Yeah, I think so.
I was one of the fortunate ones who witnessed your recent concert in Oakland at the Oakland Coliseum. And it was really just a fantastic thing to see the reaction of the people. And I think you picked a really great town to launch your tour in, because Oakland people are just beautiful. They really support the artists. Not that a lot of other cities don't, but people in the entertainment business seem to agree that Oakland's a great town to do anything,
Well, for all the people who are watching this show now up in Oakland, I'd like to, say thank you now for the tremendous support that they gave me. I thought they were terrific. I was extremely apprehensive at the beginning of the show, but once I heard the ovation and everything, I wanted to perform, so it helped tremendously. Just as I think the kids here, the ladies and gentlemen rather, are just great here, and I enjoyed doing the two numbers previously. I didn't lip sync them too well, but
you had to say that, didn't you? We're going to turn the questioning over to the Soul Train gang, Marvin, okay? And
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I would like to ask Marvin, when is he going to have a concert here at the Forum in Los Angeles?
Well, yeah, I think so. There is, some promoter told me, they said, well, if you're going to perform in Los Angeles, you should probably make it your last stop, or New York, because if you have any problems with the performance, then that's how your reviews go. I mean, promoters all over the country are interested in how your performance goes in California and New York, so probably I'll be winding up my tour here in Los Angeles, so maybe 3 months, from now.
See me there.
Okay, baby.
Hi, my name is Dwayne, and I'd like to know, what are some of your hobbies, like besides singing, because I know you like to sing, and, what else do you like to do besides singing at your spare time?
Well, I'm kind of sensual, and I enjoy people, and I like fooling around.
My name is Fawn Keonis, and I'd like to ask you, how come you was away from the stage so long?
We're giving folks, giving a few more folks a chance to come in.
I never, I had an unfortunate incident.
Well, I find my
I know
chapter.
some of you are old enough to have, Tammy and I recorded together years ago, and when we lost her, it affected me really quite psychologically, and I really didn't care to perform after that. So that was the reason.
Hi, my name is Vicky, and I would like to know whose idea was it for you and Diana Ross to get together and record an album?
It was Berry Gordy's idea.
got time for one more here.
My name is James Phillips, and I'd like to know, are you and Diana Ross going to make another album soon?
I love Diana Ross. I mean, she's a beautiful person. She's really a beautiful human being, and I enjoyed making that album with her an awful lot, and I think she's home now here in L.A. I'd love to make another album with Diane. Yes.
Okay, gang, that's all the time.
Sister Alona was trying to figure out a way to say it. Yeah.
Marv, what would you like
Now
to do?
you know why his last name made him especially uncomfortable.
I'd like to do Let's Get It On.
All right. So now, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump off into it. We got 22 folks in here now, 23 folks in here. 8 like buttons. If you forgot, please remember. And I thank you for coming back. It is 10 minutes to 5 a.m. on my side of things, so I do appreciate a thumbs up. just as a show of appreciation. Thank you. 8550 Cattaraugus. Marvin's place was a $160 a month furnished one-bedroom apartment on Cattaraugus Avenue, an anonymous-looking street in the lower middle-class neighborhood of Culver City, a quarter-mile away from Hamilton, the high school that I attended. It was shockingly plain. Apartment 1010. This is my place, Marvin explained. Anna lives with little Marvin at her sister Gwen's place in Beverly Hills. Little Marvin, age 7, was Marvin III, the son that he and Anna were raising. The apartment was in a plain, low-rise complex just off the Santa Monica Freeway. Not a hint of luxury. The living room had a hideous gold couch and a couple of worn easy chairs. The bedroom had a record player and a king-size bed facing a television. The decor didn't disappoint me. I couldn't have cared less. In fact, I was impressed that a superstar was content to live in such an unimpressive flat. I loved that he lived so close to my school. Creep alert, creep alert. But mostly, I loved that he had brought me to his domicile. That's the word that devils use in conjuring. I thought it was rather interesting that she picked that word. Anyway, to someone else it might have seemed dreary. To someone else it might have seemed dreary. I saw it as Marvin's secret hideaway. Even if he lived in a cave, it would be Marvin's cave. It would be a wonderful cave. I knew it would be a fabulous evening. I saw that Marvin was in a playful mood. There was no doubt that he had brought me there to make love. That was what I wanted. There was no part of my mind, body, or soul. Lord, just please guide my tongue, my heart, and my mind. In Jesus' name, Lord, please keep us all covered in the comfort of the Holy Spirit and the blood of Jesus to wash us white as snow and wash away from us anything that needs to go. He said, there was no part of my mind, body, or soul that did not want to please him. I wanted to excite him. He had already excited me just by choosing me. I was prepared to do what I'd done the other night, but I was hoping for more. Oh, Lord. We relaxed in the living room. We kissed on the couch. The kisses aroused me, stirred him. We moved to the bedroom. Marvin handed me a huge wooden box that contained several ounces of pot. Several ounces on him. Just walking around with a quarter pound. Could you roll us a J baby cakes? He asked politely. Sure, I said, seizing the opportunity to demonstrate my sophistication. Separating seed from stem, I worked quickly. I rolled a fat, tight joint and handed it to him. Beautiful, he said, lighting up and sucking in the smoke before passing it back to me. I inhaled deeply. The rush came fast. Marvin loved his pot, and so did I. Marijuana is an aphrodisiac. Marijuana is a buzz. Marijuana is a giggle-producing intoxicant. Marijuana puts a sensuous filter between you and the rest of the world. Okay. Marijuana was a day and night part of Marvin's life. He lived high. I saw nothing wrong with this. My mom lived high on pills. My dad Earl lived high. Good weed was seen in the same light as good coffee. It was the fuel that kept us going, kept us mellow. Good weed seemed harmless because it heightened the senses. Good weed was welcomed. We got good and stoned. I lost some of my self-consciousness about my body. I'd been told Marvin liked women with big behinds. That left me out, but at least I had a full bosom. The more I smoked, the better I felt about myself. The stronger the delusion became. We were laughing at a funny cartoon flickering across the television screen. We were embracing. We were disrobing. You don't know what you was doing. Slowly, his shirt, my blouse, his lips on the nape of my neck, the soft hair on his chest. I wanted him to want me, to enter me, to consume me. What he did for the first time in my life, I knew what it meant. When he did for the first time in my life, I knew what it meant to make love. We pressed against each other as though this would be our last time, even though it was just the beginning. I don't know why, but the lovemaking made me cry. You're a little girl. The deep pleasures, the thrilling satisfaction, the look of love in his eyes. The world was made new. You're my girl, he whispered in my ear. There was nothing I could say. The world was wonderful. Hey, Cookie Cruncher. Don't be crunching no cookies in my ear. The world was less perfect when, a few hours later, I walked into the living room to discover a man sleeping on the gold couch. I rushed back to the bedroom to tell Marvin. Don't worry, sugar, he said. That's only Abe. Who is he? My man. That designation meant that Abe was a glorified assistant whose only job was to cater to Marvin's every whim. Later, sometimes he'd call him my servant or my butler, names that would crack me up. Abe ran Marvin's errands that included, most importantly, maintaining his weed stash. Occasionally, Marvin would send him out for a gram or two of cocaine. Heroin was never on Marvin's menu, although heroin was Abe's thing. He was, in fact, a junkie. Have mercy. Right. Look like my man, 50 grand to get it again, or like, that's my man. Say, it says he was a junkie, but that don't mean nothing funky. He was in fact a junkie. Learning this put me on alert. I remembered Mom's junkie friends, many of whom were thieves. Despite his habit, Abe was accommodating and personable. Yet his presence bothered me. How long is he going to be here? I asked Marvin. Oh, he lives here. What? My heart sank. Sensing my discomfort, Marvin reassured me that Abe would not be a nuisance. His job was to make Marvin's life easier. He promised that, in his words, Abe would be like a ghost. On every level, my life became more intense. It was all about Marvin. The explosive power of our sexual union was incredible. We made love at every opportunity, night and day. We knew every inch of each other's bodies. We never used birth control. It was clear that Marvin wanted me pregnant, and I did nothing to prevent that. Beyond the sex, there was a pervasive spiritual component. Yeah, the devil. The spiritual component changed everything. This is really right. Baby sister Jessica said, don't mind him in the corner. Right. Marvin. Right. No, Abe. No, Sister Still. Abe is Marvin's little runner guy. He lives in this $150 a month apartment with Marvin. And he's a junkie. Heroin addict at that. Heroin addict. You know what? It might be Abe's house. Ain't no telling. This is something else. I think Abe was more of the runner than the dope man. But yeah. He was Marvin's bridge into the dope world. Okay. Says, okay, now I'm starting to see some things I remember from the other book. Okay, interesting. All right, check this out. It says, Uh-huh. It says, 2 weeks before meeting Marvin, I was a bored high school junior, bothered by an increasingly depressive atmosphere at home. 2 weeks before meeting me, Marvin had been struggling to complete an album on which he'd been working for nearly 3 years. Estranged from his mother figure, mentor, wife, he'd been living the life of a bachelor. So he's living just like he's not married. Okay. Anna has got custody of the children. And Marvin is basically separated from them, doing his own thing. And the album Here My Dear was made not because she simply sued him for $1 million. She was divorcing him and wanted $1 million out the lawsuit because she was intricately involved in his business affairs from the time he was a young man. So, bam. All right, but let's go. Here we are. It says, okay, so it says, Marvin was estranged from his mother figure, mentor, wife, and he'd been living the life of a bachelor. Right, hey, match made in hell. Yeah, great singer. Certainly. Going too hard in the paint, he gonna slip. Get it all over him. Says, now I had never been less bored or depressed. Now Marvin had never been more motivated to work. For both of us, the darkness had unexpectedly lifted. People around us were skeptical. People were saying that the difference in age would do us in. For a 33-year-old married man to start up with a girl barely 17 was scandalous. Is scandalous. Should be scandalous. But scandal excited Marvin's rebellious spirit. Yeah, and his middle-aged loins, too. Besides, there were no practical barriers to get in our way. Now, if I had come from a conventional family, there could well have been a problem. Right? But Mom was hardly a conventional woman. Earl Hunter was hardly a conventional dad, and my biological father, Slim Gaylord, the rogue bebopper, was the least conventional character of all. In short, I was free to do whatever I wanted to do. Scandal ridiculous. That's right, Queen of Hebrews. And there was nothing I wanted to do more than be with Marvin Gaye every second of the day. This is something here. Unbelievable. I was hardly the only one who harbored this feeling. Marvin projected the kind of uber cool calm that made everyone want to be with him. He loved to laugh. He had a wild and sometimes corny sense of humor, especially after smoking a good joint. If he was in the studio, you wanted to run over and catch a little of his mellow, whether he was singing or just hanging. You didn't mind if he told the same joke over and over. You wanted to kick back with him and hear him, in his easygoing way, talk about the parables of Jesus or the foibles of Berry Gordy, or his own foibles when back in Detroit he decided to quit singing to try out for the Detroit Lions football squad. Yeah, that's in Divided Soul. I remembered that. Matter of fact, that's when they brought up that the voice on Mercy, Mercy Me, the one saying, "Hey, Marvin, Marvin." That's one of the Lions star players back then, Mel Farr, who also liked to drop in on Marvin's sessions. And him and Mel Farr was tight, and that's how Marvin Gaye actually got a real official tryout with the Detroit Lions. Anyway, Marvin took himself very seriously, but then again, he didn't take himself seriously at all. He talked about his regard for Bing Crosby and Perry Como, singers who were relaxed beyond reason. Marvin moved at a slow but steady pace that made it easy for you to scale down your all-too-nervous rhythms. Between Marvin and myself, the rhythm of romance quickened. I was in the studio all the time, watching Marvin work his magic. He needed to see me, needed to touch me, needed to sing to me. He said that my presence awakened his spirit. He said that my beauty brought out his beast. Thank you. Thank you, Mystic Light. Thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate you. Have mercy. Okay. Says, I found beauty and excitement in his sexual beast. I experienced it as a gentle and patient beast, even as his passion for making love quickened my own desire. We couldn't stay away from each other. Every night he fetched me in either his maroon Lincoln or his moss green Cadillac. Moss green, Marvin? Okay. He was all throwed off. When he couldn't wait till nighttime, he began picking me up in the afternoon at school. Lord have mercy, this evening. Whew. Have a great day. And please come back and join us again some Wednesday or Saturday night. That's when we hang out. Says, I cannot believe this stuff. One day he arrived at Hamilton High behind the wheel of a snow-white Bentley. It must be Barry's. He said, when I spotted him in the car, I ran to greet him. We embraced. Let's just take a drive, he said. Fine, I agreed. I could feel that he was in a reflective mood. Yes, he's a serious Zoid. Beyond that, he's a pedozoid. I could feel that he was in a reflective mood. After we'd gone a few blocks, he began talking about his recent past and his decision to abandon Detroit. It took a while. He told me that after Berry Gordy, Diana Ross, Smokey Robinson, and all the others had made the move west, he was the last to leave. The least likely man to follow the pack. Marvin resisted Anna's argument that he needed to stay close to Motown. He described how last year Berry Gordy had turned Diana Ross into a movie star, casting her as Billie Holiday in Lady Sings the Blues. The movie was a triumph. Diana was nominated for an Academy Award. With Anna's prodding, Berry could do the same for Marvin. But none of that was going to happen in Detroit. Hollywood was the place. Marvin said that he knew, though, that he could never have written What's Going On in Hollywood. Those songs carried the feel of hardcore urban Detroit. He had great affection for the Motor City. Yet, fighting the freezing Michigan winters and facing the snowdrifts covering his front door, Marvin had to face another fact. He was, after all, concerned about his career. He cared deeply about increasing his visibility and popularity, in spite of his inherent shyness, his deep insecurities, and an almost crippling fear of performing. He was a fierce competitor. He had always wanted to be more than a star. He had wanted to be the biggest star of all, that ambitious energy or that ambitious spirit that drives them to want to be the Queen Mother Goddess representation in the music business. He had it concerning wanting to be the Luciferian representation, or the male representation of Lucifer, being the biggest male star of all, crooning to the ladies, being the alpha male supreme. That drive was what brought him out to L.A., whereas Anna predicted he found success in the movies. He explained that it wasn't in a starring role, that could well come later, but as a composer in his brilliant score to Trouble Man. Soon after arriving in Hollywood, he was asked to record a duet album with Diana Ross. Marvin had conflicted feelings about the project. He said that he and Diana had always been friendly, but this particular partnership was problematic. They were both under the astrological bondage of believing themselves to be Aries. So these are people who both believe they are number one, according to the spell that they were under and the spell that they were in agreement with willingly by claiming these things. So they bumped heads naturally. Okay, he said, because they both feel like they are first. All right. He said that he and Diana had always been friendly, but this particular partnership was problematic in the aftermath of what's going on. With no less than 3 top 10 singles, Marvin's stock had dramatically risen. He was finally recognized as an independent artist, not just another cog in the Motown machine. He neither needed nor wanted an outside producer. He also freely admitted that he was jealous of the attention that Berry Gordy lavished on Diana Ross. Initially, Marvin refused to do the record. He explained how Anna Gordy's bond to her baby brother Berry was ironclad. She wanted to help Berry realize a project that would help Diana. At the same time, Anna was convinced that a Marvin-Diana duet album made artistic and commercial sense for her husband. In the 60s, her singular ability to coax Marvin into the studio. Divided Soul talked a lot about how Marvin wouldn't go into the studio till Anna would coax him to go in there. It was odd. Almost as if, she played the handler role. Said, in the 60s, her singular ability to coax Marvin into the studio, especially during those times when depression had him down and reluctant to work, had proven effective. Like no one else, Anna could motivate Marvin. It took time, but she finally persuaded him to do this Diana Ross album. Marvin caved, but he carried his resentments to the sessions. He came in puffing on an outsized joint. A pregnant Diana refused to sing around the smoke. The vocals were ultimately done on separate dates. The production itself was old school Motown. Berry Gordy and Hal Davis were the producers. Marvin made 2 demands: that he receive producer royalties and that his name appear before Diana's. Both were summarily rejected. His job was to simply come to the studio and sing. Ultimately, that's what he did. To his ears, the results sounded dated, a 60s style record out of step with the 70s, and sales of Diana and Marvin would be less than spectacular. I've never heard it. Marvin would never do another album like it again. I don't like Diana. Like Detroit people's supposed to feel. I feel the same way. I inherited it. He told me how the incident further fueled the tension between him and Anna. It was Anna and Berry who had connected Marvin with the William Morris Agency in the hopes of landing film roles. Says, interesting. Okay, very interesting add-on, Quinley Hebrews, certainly. Yeah, it's interesting because this is with David Ritz, and so was Marvin's autobiography, which was Divided Soul, also with David Ritz, and they both, that terminology was used in there too about Anna coaxing him in. And isn't it interesting that Anna's name is a palindrome, same thing forward and backward, right? Meaning like dual, and then you have Janis. And the man's autobiography called Divided Soul. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I do know. But I'll let you tell me. Okay. Says, he told me how the incident further fueled the tension between him and Anna. There you go. Two-Face, that's right. Double edge, Gemini, Harmon, Hermes, Harmony. This double-minded spirit that fuels entertainment. The actor who uses the technique of, what's that technique called? The name of it slips my mind. Method acting. Okay, or the singer who has to play a role in the song he's sad, or in the song he's proposing to a woman. There is the you. There's the one personality representing you, or the one head, or the one direction representing you as you were created to be personality wise, and then the other side is what you've created, right? Like a James Todd Smith and LL Cool J, right? There is what you was born as, and then there's what you created, or what the adversary inspired you to create without your full knowledge or consent. But let's read. It says, he told me how the incident further fueled the tension between him and Anna. It was Anna and Barry who had connected Marvin with the William Morris Agency in the hopes of landing film roles. He was cast in 2 small films, The Ballad of Andy Crocker and Chrome and Hot Leather. But the parts were insubstantial and led to nothing bigger. I had no idea. Now, I could understand why Marvin saw his connection to Anna, and in turn her connection to Barry, as an impediment to his freedom. This Bentley is Anna's car, not mine. I guess I was close. I guess I was close. He said, this Bentley is Anna's car, not mine. Marvin told me during the drive. Yeah, she loans it to me to remind me of her elegance and her power. I felt a knot of fear forming in my stomach. As Marvin drove in the direction of the studio, I stayed silent. What's wrong? He finally asked. You've never picked me up in this car before. I'm just not comfortable being driven around in Anna's car. Why? I was afraid of displeasing Marvin, but at the same time, I needed to speak my mind. It's strange, I said, and also a little creepy. So now you can pick up on what's creepy. And also a little creepy. What's the point of picking me up in a car that belongs to your wife? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to prove? Marvin offered only the slightest of smiles. For the first time, I saw how he derived some perverse pleasure in creating discomfort for himself as well as for others. Yeah, I'm starting to remember. Yeah, he does do that. It's going to get deeper. Okay. The relief was always the music. When we finally arrived at the Motown studio in West Hollywood, it was Marvin's music that softened my discomfort. In Marvin's world, his music made everyone and everything all right. His music consisted of many voices. Overdubbing those voices, stacking the vocals, was a technique he mastered while recording what's going on. He called it a spiritual exercise in harmonies, Gemini, Janis. Each of these voices was unique. A sweet falsetto because it's many Marvins. When you hear Marvin's harmonies, you don't hear Marvin singing with some background singers that's singing harmony. Marvin got the thing of doing it all himself. So it's many Marvins. Again, that's Project Janisy. But let's continue. Watch how she describes it. So you can see I'm not reaching. Don't have to. Says, each of these voices was unique. A sweet falsetto. A tender mid-range. A sexual growl. A bottommost plea. Each emanated from his heart, yet each represented a different part of his one-of-a-kind musical mind or a different alter or aspect of his personality. That's what I'm adding in. Each contained pain. Again, a trauma-based alter. Each contained hope. Again, a duality, a double-minded altar. If he could blend these different voices with such ease and grace in his music, surely he could blend the differences in his own personality. You look happy, Ed Townsend told me when Marvin had left the studio to take a phone call in the office. I see he's in a good place. I hope he stays there. He will, I said. You're doing a good job of making him happy. So that's what her job was. Her job was to get him in there and get him to record. And we know he needs a nice young thing. It'll help to motivate him. We need him to get in there and follow this what's going on money. He's been working on this album for 3 years now. Anna can't get him to record no more. They're not kicking it like that. So we gotta do what we gotta do, Barry. Yep. There it is. Mm-hmm. There it is. That's it. That's what it is. Because now, again, I'm remembering some things. That was a big emphasis in Divided Soul was we got to get Marvin to get back in the studio. We can never figure out how to get him back in the studio. And Janis was when they figured out a way to get him back in the studio. I remember this now. Okay. Interesting. Uh-huh. Because Ed's words, right, that's right, a young tender. His heart belonged to Tenderoni. But she wasn't his only girl. It said, you're doing a good job of making him happy. Thanks a lot, Dad, I said with heavy sarcasm. Anything to keep him satisfied. Some people can't handle happiness, so they find a way to F it up. Well, maybe he just hasn't found the right person to make him happy, I said. Maybe you're right, baby. I hope so. If anyone can keep him satisfied, I know it's you. Yeah, this is weird. I thought about that word. Sat or sit. Satisfied. It came up in the title of the song that Marvin was tweaking that day, just to keep you satisfied. The final cut on the album, Let's Get It On. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was something wrong with him loving her. As beautiful as it was, the song didn't feel like it belonged on the record. It pointed to another story, another time, and another character. Because it was about Anna. Okay. And she gonna get into getting jealous about what song is by, or what song is inspired by her, which one is done by Anna, or which one is inspired by Anna. Yeah, all of that's okay. Sister Vanette said he had serious control issues. He had serious control issues and issues of control, making people uncomfortable with the realities of his own discomfort. Instead of protecting her, then making her feel safe with the music. Control, yeah. Mind control, manipulation, mental manipulation. Hurt people. Okay. It says, not an excuse, but a reason. It says, okay, here we go. Just to Keep You Satisfied was about Marvin and Anna. That's what it says. Okay. The lyrics were explicit. Anna was his wife. She represented his hopes and dreams. He endured her jealousy even as he cherished their lovemaking. His deepest desire was to satisfy her. She was so much older than him, he felt intimidated. These was older, worldly girls, Barry's sisters. And they were, by all accounts, boss ladies. And he's a young man about 20. And she's just about 40. So you do the math. When they got together. So so he wrote several songs to her. Just to Keep You Satisfied was one. All right. It says, his deepest desire was to satisfy her. But it wasn't meant to be. Mental strain tore them apart. Differences could not be reconciled. See, everybody getting married for the wrong reason. They're getting together for the wrong reason. Everybody doing everything for the wrong reason. Differences could not be reconciled. They tried over and over again. But it was too late. Much too late, Junior. The marriage was doomed. The marriage was over. I had never heard Marvin sing more beautifully or with such profound sadness. I was comforted by his acknowledgement that his relationship with Anna was obviously finished. I wanted it finished. I wanted Marvin for myself. But I also couldn't help but feel the strength of the emotional bond revealed in this song. I couldn't help but feel how much Anna meant to Marvin. And I couldn't help but fear the power that this woman still had over him. There could be no doubt Anna was my adversary. As a result, I made a concerted effort to please Marvin in every way. That's why Marvin brought that car, and that's why y'all had that conversation, so you would have that feeling and you would turn up. As a result, I made a concerted effort to please Marvin in every way. When he described Anna as being dominant, I knew I had to be more submissive. He was just able to have it his way. If he felt like getting bossed, he'd go here. If he felt like being the boss, he'd go there. When he told me the story of how, during a brutal argument, Anna had struck the stiletto heel of her shoe into his forehead, I swore that violence would have no place in our relationship. Yes, I said that. On her side, Anna had a long history with Marvin. She had money, power, and influence. She was one of the few people on the planet who could make him work. On my side, I had youth and sex and a free love hippie attitude that Marvin found alluring. Either way, it was clear that the longer I was with Marvin, the more Anna would do to make his life miserable. Anna was a hard act to follow, but she represented structure. In Marvin's world, Anna came first, then Barry, and then himself. I represented freedom. I was the one who put his happiness first. Marvin bragged to others about it, claiming that I was incredible because I worshipped the ground he walked on. Right? After not getting love from his father even trying to wedge something in between Marvin and Marvin's mother's relationship. He was seeking love. He spent all his time singing about love. He get him an older woman for like the security that some mistake as love. And now he's doing just the opposite. Now he wants a younger woman to dominate her, okay, so that he can build up his insecurities in that manner. Interesting. Wow. Yeah, all of this. Yeah, Green Onion says freedom. She sounds like a slave. She sounds like a slave to me, thinking of him 24/7, right? Vanette Glau said, yike, that ground walking worship gets old too. Amen. Cupcake 701 says, he didn't love Anna or her. It was just about business most of the time. Okay. Now, it said, yes, claiming that I was incredible because I worshipped the ground he walked on. I enjoyed hearing that, but after a while, I saw the flaws in my thinking. It showed that I wasn't making myself happy, and in many ways, I began to take it out on myself and Marvin. Another week went by of beautiful love making at the apartment and beautiful music at the studio. Another week when, from time to time, Marvin wandered off to Hamilton High to shoot hoops on the outdoor basketball court. For me, the only problem was Marvin's man, Abe. He was still living at Cattaraugus, where he slept on the hideous gold couch. Marvin knew that I was uncomfortable in his presence, but wouldn't deny himself the convenience of having his personal assistants close at hand. Personal assistant. Right, he needed a muse. Yes, well said, Christy Joy. He even said it himself in one of the chapters that we read previously. Lots of great comments. Okay, let's go. All right. Excellent add-ons, everybody. Roti Dunnigan, good to see you in the place. Asada Giovanni, very good. Very good. He got an adopted son by Anna, correct? Funny, his sister is the girl who played Diana Ross in the Temptation TV movie. Can't make this stuff up. I didn't know that, but thank you so much. Okay. All right. Let's pick this up. It's a devilish mess. Says, Marvin knew that I was uncomfortable in Abe's presence, but wouldn't deny himself the convenience of having his personal assistant close in hand. Compared to other superstars, Marvin was living a super Spartan lifestyle, but he was also spoiled. Marvin's contradictions became more evident with every passing day. He was adamant on separating himself from Motown. When the Motown execs called, wanting to hear the new record in progress and wondering when it would be ready for release, he ignored them. He had no interest in their input and blatantly disregarded their deadlines. But late at night, when he and I were alone driving through the city, he'd turn to me and say, I wonder what Barry would think of this record. I wonder if he'll like it. I saw that Marvin's confidence and insecurity were in constant conflict. One day he was certain that the new album was brilliant. The next day he worried how, after the political consciousness of what's going on, the world would regard the carnal intensity of let's get it on. He kept vacillating. The record would be a huge hit. The record would be a huge flop. He'd be rewarded or he'd be ridiculed. He didn't need Motown to tell him how much they loved the album, but he did need everyone in the studio to reassure him that it was great. On this particular night, after spending another 3 or 4 days sweetening the vocals, Marvin was still reluctant to let Motown hear what he had done. He was behind the wheel of the green caddy. I was by his side. I was still amazed that the man of my dreams had let me into his world. He kept saying that, like a dream. I had stepped into his life. A midnight mist covered the Sunset Strip. Tourists lined up outside the neon nightclubs. Working girls stood in the shadows of the streetlights. Some were long-legged beauties. Others looked tired and sad. Would you roll us a J, my dear? Marvin quietly asked me. He loved calling me dear. I loved how the word fell so easily from his lips. We shared a joint. It wasn't a fresh high. We had been smoking off and on since early afternoon, but it was a good late night high. A high that let us cruise through Hollywood with the sweet anticipation of heading home and making love. It was a trouble-free high that had us especially mellow until we heard the siren and saw the flashing police light. Here we go. Marvin pulled over. 2 cops stepped up to the car. Marvin had no choice but to roll down the window. The smell of pot was pervasive. Please get out of the car, said the first cop. Aren't you Marvin Gaye? Asked the second. Marvin was upset, but he hid it well. He knew the police would search the car and find a bag of weed in the glove compartment. Officer, if I could use your car phone to make a single call, he said, I'd be most grateful. Instant charm. They obliged him. It took only 10 minutes for a tall, beautiful, light-skinned black woman to pull up beside us. This was Suzanne DePass, high-ranking Motown exec and Berry Gordy's closest aide. She was no nonsense. She gave me a look as if to say, wow, 2 stoned idiots. She was friendly but stern with Marvin before moving quickly to address the police. I couldn't hear what Suzanne was saying, but she was obviously effective because within minutes the cops were leaving the scene. There were no tickets, no repercussions. Marvin got off scot-free, smoking weed with an underage girl. 17? I don't know. Ain't this something? This is something. Okay, on the way back to Cattaraugus, Marvin was silent. He felt some type of way. I knew that he was relieved, but I also knew that he was unhappy that I had witnessed his dependence on Motown. Like a child in trouble at school, he needed his lifeline, Motown, to rescue him, even though Motown was the authority against which he rebelled. This incident had made him feel less like a man and more like a boy. There was no lovemaking that night. In the morning, there was the awkward presence of Abe. "You're not comfortable when Abe is around, are you?" Marvin asked me. "You know I'm not." "And if I asked him to move out and invited you to move in, how would that make you feel?" The question took my breath away. I had been wishing for this very thing. It hadn't been 2 months since that night I'd first come to the studio. Yes, yes, yes. "And what if your mother objects?" asked Marvin. "My mother? No problem. How soon can Abe go?" "Be patient, dear." Patience didn't come easily. I was afraid that Marvin would change his mind and never ask Abe to leave. He'd never allow me to move in. As my love for Marvin grew, so did my own fears and insecurities. I started to grow up as our relationship grew. Even though I was 17 and under the influence of drugs, I was beginning to realize that I, too, needed someone to make me feel special, to want to make me happy. I wanted to give him the children that he asked for. I wanted to let him have his flings, even if I had to bite my lip later and cry when he was away. I gave in when I probably shouldn't have. I danced along that dangerous line of being accommodating, but not giving in too much. And I was often left alone and hurting. And here we go. In Love with the Night. This is our last reading for the night. In Love with the Night. We're about a third way, just about a third way through the book. It's not very thick, but believe it or not, this is only page 58 out of 287. Okay. In Love with the Night. Let's go. My mother and I awaited the arrival of Marvin, who was on his way to gather up all my worldly possessions and move them into his simple, unimpressive one-bedroom apartment. Abe was gone. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" my mother asked me. I was sure of one thing. My connection to Marvin was the strongest emotion I'd ever felt. "I'll be fine," I told Mom. "Trey Jermaine, peace and blessings. Good to see you in here." She said, Right on. Right on, Asada Giovanni. She said, "I'll be fine," I told Mom. "I don't want you to get hurt." "I won't. He loves me. I love him." "You haven't even known him a couple of months." "You've married me and you've known for less time than that." "He's already married." "He's separated, but still married. The marriage is over. He's even written a song about how a song isn't a divorce. He's getting a divorce." "I want to trust him," said Mom, "but I know these singers. I know them all too well." When Marvin arrived, it was as though he had heard that remark. He was barely polite to Mom. He resented whatever authority, no matter how tenuous, my mother held over me. In his mind, I now belonged to him, not Mom. He swept me away. My possessions weren't any more than a hope chest from Pier 1 and clown-shaped salt and pepper shakers. The minute I arrived in the apartment, I felt a huge difference. Before, I was a visitor. Now, I belonged. In the following weeks, Marvin and I fell deeper in love. Late at night, when Marvin couldn't sleep, he sat in front of a little keyboard and fashioned melodies with such astonishing ease that I could only watch and marvel. As he pressed the keys, the wordless sounds he sang carried a lush beauty that was otherworldly. It was as though he was lost in prayer or meditation. After a while, he reached over and picked up a paperback book, dog-eared to a particular page. He stopped playing and began to read out loud. As he recited the lines, his eyes were lit with love, alive with a glow I had never seen before. He kept looking at me. I held his gaze. "Oh, speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night, being over my head, as is a winged messenger of heaven, unto the white upturned wondering eyes of mortals that fall back to gaze on him, when he bestrides the lazy pacing clouds and sails upon the bosom of the air." "What are you reading?" I asked. "I found this in one of your books." I walked over to where Marvin was seated and saw that he was reading from my copy of Romeo and Juliet. "It's when Romeo was looking at Juliet up on the balcony," said Marvin. "I won't be able to say it as well as Romeo. No matter what words I use, I'll never be able to explain how much I love you. I've always loved you, dear." "That was before you knew me. But what about now that you know me?" "Oh, I love you even more now." "I need to hear you say that. I'll never tire of hearing that." "I'll never tire of saying it." Right? His eyes filled with tears. I was weeping as well. We embraced, holding each other tight, elongating the moment in which our world consisted only of this embrace. No coldness, no cruelty, no pain, no problems, no heartaches, no hardships. Just this closeness, this union, this love. Later that night, he turned back to the keyboard in search of a song that had eluded him. I fell asleep on the couch. The sound of his voice informed my dreams. When I awoke, he was still playing. Day was breaking. The next morning, I rolled the first joint of the day and started dressing for school. Still in bed, Marvin accepted the joint and begged me to stay. "What's the point?" he asked. To learn." "I can teach you everything you need to know," he said only half jokingly. "We're reading Shakespeare together, aren't we?" "Literature is one thing, driver's education is another. I'm learning to drive." "I'll teach you. I'll be a far more loving and patient teacher than whomever the school provides. I think it's time for you to leave school." "To do what?" To do what you said you've always wanted to. Live your life with me." The offer was undoubtedly tempting. Much of school was boring, but I wasn't ready to leave. Ever since I'd been a little girl, I had been told that I was bright. Quitting school didn't feel right. Wasn't a diploma the key to the future? At the same time, I couldn't imagine a greater future than being with Marvin. And truth be told, I did harbor a secret ambition to be in show business. I knew I could sing, I could dance, and yet I did want my degree. "Why should you care if I stay in school?" I asked. "I care about us being together every hour of every day. I don't want to share you. There are all those strapping young high school football players looking to love on you." "They're boys, Marvin, not men." "Nonetheless, they're my competitors. They're young and horny, and I'd not be surprised if more than a few broad-shouldered jocks have caught your eye." "They bore me." "You say that now. But when you're still young and fine and I'm old and gray, you'll say that same thing about me. Never. So, say you'll leave school and stay by my side. I want to be with you every hour of every day. Marvin. He reached out and brought me back to bed, where we made love until we were exhausted. I arrived at school 2 hours late. At the end of the school day, Marvin drove up to Hamilton High in the white Bentley. I was happy to see him, but not the car. Did you tell them you're leaving? Was the first question he asked. Whoa, I said. You just brought it up this morning. Won't you give me a little time to think about it? Long ago and far away, a poet once wrote, "At my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near. Time is rushing, rushing, rushing." Well, I really do need time to think it over, but it's hard for me to do any serious thinking in this car. You told me you weren't going to drive it anymore. I'm returning it now. I'm bringing it back to Anna. She and little Marvin are at her sister Gwen's. We're going over there now? Does that bother you? Of course, you know it does. How could it not? I just need to switch cars and pick up my son. It'll just take a minute. Be cool, dear. We drove up to Gwen Gordy's house, where Marvin parked the Bentley and had me wait in his maroon Lincoln in the driveway. Waiting for Marvin to emerge from the house, I was nervous. I didn't want to be there. I hated that he had forced me into this position. I wondered whether he was putting me on display. Had he driven me here so that Anna could get a glimpse of the other woman, the young chick with whom he was having a torrid affair? When the door to the house opened and Marvin emerged, followed by his 7-year-old son and then Anna, my heart sank. Anna was scary, a strong woman in her 50s who, with a determined gait, walked to where I was seated on the passenger side of the Lincoln. She was heavily made up, not unattractive matriarch with a round face and fair skin. She wore a purple crushed velvet pantsuit, diamond earrings, and a heavy gold chain around her neck. Her hair had been softened and styled. Her eyes burned with anger. She was focused on me. Look here, Anna, said Marvin. Don't go and start trouble. Paying no attention to her husband, Anna ordered me to roll down my window. Don't do it, Jan. She from the D. Filled with fright, I lowered the electric window only an inch. I was afraid Anna might haul off and sock me. I just want to see what someone like you looks like, Anna said with undisguised disgust. Yeah, she looked like a male Barry Gordy. Oh, boy. Smokey and Marvin both know they was wrong. Both of them know they didn't want them women. Anyway, business moves. He said he got moved on, too, in the end. A few seconds passed. I was speechless, but Anna was not. She added, now that I've seen it, don't ever bring it back here again. The words haunted me for the rest of the day. Now that I've seen it, don't ever bring it back here again. I wasn't a person. I was an it. I felt like spit. Marvin drove off with me in the passenger seat and little Marvin in the back. He said we were having lunch at Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles restaurant on Gower Street. That's been around a long time. Folks act like that's new. Out this way. Anyway, Marvin's arrival caused a commotion. Fans ran over to ask for an autograph. Everyone wanted their picture taken with him. Polite to a fault, he accommodated nearly everyone. But seeing that his son was not happy sharing his dad with the world, Marvin gently cut off contact with his fans, explaining that this was a family moment and would they do him the courtesy of affording him a bit of privacy. His request was expressed so so solicitously that the people quickly backed off. I considered his remark about this being a family moment. In truth, Marvin's nuclear family was shattered. His relationship with Anna was damaged beyond repair. He said little about his biological family. His mother and father were back in Washington, D.C. Marvin spoke of his mother in saintly terms. He adored her. He rarely mentioned his father at all. But when he did, a look of consternation passed over his face. Clearly, he held no affection for the man. When I asked more about Father Gay, Marvin said only, "He's very strange." Then there was the happy Motown family that Marvin called a myth. Gordy's strategy of exciting competition between his artists and producers had led to vicious sibling rivalries. Within that family, though, certain people treated both Marvin and me with extreme kindness. Clarence Paul, for example, was wonderful. He was a writer-producer who had acted as Stevie Wonder's surrogate father during Stevie's early years at Motown. And I've heard that Stevie's mother was in Barry's employ. So it's interesting that I see this. Yes, I'm talking about for his side hustle, not his business that the world applauds him for. It says, okay, he was a writer-producer who had acted as Stevie Wonder's surrogate father during Stevie's early years at Motown. He also acted as a surrogate big brother to Marvin. Marvin was looking for a surrogate family, a wise uncle figure like Harvey Fuqua, an understanding surrogate sister like Gwen or Esther Gordy, Anna's siblings. He found it impossible to come to terms with his own biological family. These fractured families, both Marvin's and mine, were huge obstacles to overcome. And yet, given the power of our love, I believed we had the potential to create a strong and wholesome family of our own. I wondered if Marvin felt the same. 2 weeks later, I found out when I brought him news that gave me both trepidation and joy. I was pregnant. Now that's our second chapter. Let's read one more. One more. Wait a minute. But now, as far as the cliffhanger goes, I should stop right here. I should stop right here. That's a cliffhanger for you. Not exactly because you know what's going to happen, but we don't know the details of how it all goes down. And thank folks who have given me a thumbs up and who have stuck around. I see 54 people, 36 thumbs up. Again, perhaps it slipped your mind. If you don't mind, please do hit that thumbs up one time. Again, this is a reading in conjunction with our songwriter secret study. Okay, because we see all sorts of red flags and indicators to the involvement of a supernatural and occult presence, at least unbeknownst to Marvin. At least. Let's see. Two more. But let's see, one more. Let's see, one more. I think Rhiannon says she's tired of it. Well, one more. Okay. And thank you, Roti Dunnigan. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay. So, because I got a little more energy and it's just a few pages, I will read one more. One more. All right? Let's go. Impatient for your love. I'm touched, said Marvin. I'm joyful. I'm grateful to God. I couldn't be happier, dear. He took me in his arms and held me to his chest. My heart beat wildly. I was deeply relieved. He had proven to be the man I knew he was. A son, he whispered in my ear. We will have a son. His statement took me aback. And what if it's a girl, Marvin? Oh, I think you're having a boy. I didn't like that thought. I didn't like the pressure. We'll see, I said, forcing a smile. We dropped the subject of boy versus girl, but his attitude continued to bother me. At the same time, I wanted to please Marvin. In the early years of our relationship, that single mantra, I must please Marvin, I must please Marvin, never faded. Yeah, somebody probably programmed that into your little subconscious. If I didn't please him, I was afraid he'd discard me. The news of my pregnancy came at a great time, 17th year of life, with an R&B singer who's got a wife. Great time. Good times. Good times. Marvin's long overdue record was complete. I had been to the studio countless times where I'd heard the songs over and over again. I never tired of listening to that strangely erotic romantic suite of songs. Even though Marvin contemplated his death in If I Should Die Tonight. Even though he was pining for a woman lost in a faraway landscape in Distant Lover. Even though he was drenched in sorrow and regret in the marriage ending Just to Keep You Satisfied. The album's dominant theme was sex, sex, and more sex. He wasn't simply pleading, let's get it on once. He was pleading twice with keep getting it on. And reinforcing the act of love a third time with you sure love to ball. At the moment it had been decided that Let's Get It On would be the first single. The very night he finally played the album for the Motown executive who flipped out and called it an across-the-board smash, Marvin and I went back to our little cave on Cattaraugus. He slipped the single into the cassette player, and together we slowly slipped out of our clothes. Our naked dance of love gradually moved to the bedroom where the song of love repeated endlessly as the act of love was the most intense in our still young relationship. I had never been more inside his music, inside his life, inside his heart. That night the world was beautiful, blissful, passionate, and peaceful. Nothing could go wrong. And then everything did. I thought it was the result of being too sexually active, turned on about being parents. Marvin and I had intense athletic lovemaking sessions. With Let's Get It On playing in the background, we tried to get as close to each other as was physically possible. It was only days later when I began hemorrhaging. The blood was sudden and startling. I called my mother, then Marvin, then the doctor. Marvin met me at the hospital where the doctor used the one word I did not want to hear. Miscarriage. The impact on both of us was enormous. We felt a great sense of loss. Dear, said Marvin, dear, those things happen. God gives and God takes away. We praise him for his goodness and trust that next time he will bless us with a healthy boy. I have no doubt, darling, that there will be a next time. I wished he wouldn't have restated his insistence on having a boy, but no matter. I was greatly relieved that he was comforting and loving and still committed to our relationship. As crazy as it might sound, I was afraid of disappointing him. I even feared that the miscarriage might chase him away. Fears of losing Marvin, fears of being undermined by those around him, fears of being banished from his world were never far from my consciousness. For years to come, love and fear shared the same chambers of my heart. On certain nights, the anxiety subsided. On one such night, the moon was full and the world was at peace. Marvin and I were driving up Highway 1 past Malibu. In the back seat were the actor Richard Lawson and his future wife, Denise Gordy, the niece of Barry and Anna. There seemed to be no hidden tension. Marvin and I had socialized with Richard and Denise before. We all got along splendidly. We loved to get high and laugh like little kids. The weed we had been smoking intensified the happy mood. The stars glittered, Moonlight danced off the Pacific. The ocean breeze was cool and refreshing. The universe was a friendly place. On the way up the coast, switching radio stations, we heard Let's Get It On 3 different times. The song was soaring up the charts. Marvin couldn't have been more delighted. A few miles north of Malibu at Trancas Beach, the car sputtered to a halt. Without losing his customary cool, Marvin announced, "I'm afraid we've exhausted all our resources." "What do you mean?" I asked. "No gas," said Marvin. "No problem," said Richard. "The men will go get gas while the women wait behind." Marvin and Richard were gone for a good hour. When they returned, they were empty-handed. "The gas station was closed," said Richard. "But all is not lost," Marvin added. "Our resources are, in fact, not completely exhausted." He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a joint. Denise and I applauded. Smoking added to the wild and woozy nature of the night. "What now?" Richard asked Marvin. "Now we explore," said Marvin. "Look at that beach." Not concerned about a thing, Marvin was the first to throw off his shoes and step onto the sand. Denise followed by removing her top. I was a little hesitant. "Well, what about you, Jan?" asked Marvin. "Surely you have nothing to hide. Reveal yourself, dear. Reveal yourself proudly." For a second, I flashed on that awful day in Bel Air when, at age 14, my mother had allowed me to strip for Luke and Big Jack. But that was different. Those guys were creeps. Marvin was my man. He was proud that I had perfect breasts. I exposed them. As we all made our way down the beach, Richard, not to be outdone by the women, decided to remove his pants. It took Marvin less than a minute to do the same. Our ridiculousness only added to our pleasure. Where were we going? We didn't know, didn't care. We cavorted as though we didn't have a concern in the world. Not 15 minutes passed before we saw a woman coming in our direction. Marvin and Richard stepped back into their pants. Denise and I didn't bother to put on our tops, but covered our breasts with our hands. The woman stopped in her tracks. "My God," she said, "you're Marvin Gaye. You're absolutely beautiful." Before Marvin had a chance to reply, I whispered, That's Margot Kidder?" Lois Lane from the Superman movies, from the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. "I am," said the movie actress, "and I'd love for you guys to come to a party. I'm on my way there myself." "We've no good reason to refuse your kind invitation," said Marvin. "Lead the way." Boldly, Margot planted herself next to Marvin. I thought that she might have the hots for my man. A few minutes later, the 5 of us reached a well-lit beachfront house where a party was in progress. "Look who I brought," announced Margot as we entered the living room. "It's marvelous Marvin Gaye. Can you believe it?" Yeah, Margot Kidder. The host was the well-known actor Peter Boyle. Thrilled that his friend Margot had somehow found Marvin wandering the beach outside his home. By mere chance, someone at the party had brought a copy of Let's Get It On. Within minutes, the song was blaring. All eyes were on Marvin, basking in the attention. The party people freely shared their goodies. There was plenty of pot, coke, and acid. There was wild hippie dancing, arms flopping around with hips swerving. There was intense burning and candles lit everywhere. It was a laid-back atmosphere. Sound more like an atmosphere you should be kind of tense and uptight. Make sure you don't fall down and burn up. All these high people gyrating going on. It says it was a laid-back atmosphere. A few of the couples wandered off into the bedrooms. Right, coincidental. It says a few of the couples wandered off into the bedrooms. Margot stuck close to Marvin. Given the free-flowing sexual vibe, I wondered whether she would actually make a move on him. Right, there you go. Yes, Kanga Kong, I do believe so. It said, okay, before Margot had a chance, though, Peter Boyle made a bizarre move of his own. He took off the music to announce a surprise. Gather around, everyone. It's time for me to offer up something I've been wanting to show you all night. With our surprise guest of honor now in attendance, I will not keep you waiting. The next thing I saw was Boyle pulling down his pants and revealing his pale, hairy backside. It was quite a night. Yes. That's when Marvin decided that it was time to split. Against the protests of Peter and Margot, the four of us bade the party people good night and headed back to the car. Peter gave us a can of gas, and we were on our way home. There was a full moon out that night. Yeah, I know. Peter just gave it to you. How'd you like the evening? Marvin asked me when we were back on Cattaraugus. Interesting. Interesting good or interesting bad? It was a little crazy, I said. I still can't believe what we saw, but I'm glad we went. He kissed my forehead and slowly undressed me. It was exciting seeing you on the beach, he said. It's exciting seeing you on the bed. That night we made beautiful love. In one another's arms, we slept until early afternoon. When I awoke, Marvin was staring into my eyes. I want us to go away, he said. Where to? Away from everyone, where it's only you and me and Mother Nature. No city smog or crime or sirens in the middle of the night. No sounds except the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves. Fresh air, blue skies. At night, looking at the stars. Let's just get away from it all. Escape, hide. But your record's out and it's a hit. They want you to promote it. Even a better reason to get away. What do you say, dear? Will you come with me? Can you run away with me into the woods? Where? I asked again. It doesn't matter. As long as it's in the middle of nowhere and no one can find us. Trying to put a spell on her? And why is it so important that no one find us? Because I want you all to myself. I want us all to ourselves. I want nothing interfering with our love. I want nothing between us and God and nature. Are you really serious about moving out of the city? Serious as sin, and it would be a sin if we don't make our escape from the madness that's about to unfold. What do you say, dear? Will you run away with me? You know I will. And that's that. That's right. That's right, Big Nick Jared. God got nothing to do with it. Don't put his name in this. I've had enough. Peace and blessings to you, Big Nephew Dominique. Good to see you in the place. Finette Cloud, you silly. He was the monster in Young Frankenstein and the Frank in Everyone Loves Raymond. Really? Interesting. Well, what's going on, Brother Matthew? Good to see you. Count it all joy. But I'm going to tell you about your boy. I did 6 hours and just turned around and did another hour and a half. So it's about that time. So I'm sorry for anybody that's just not joining in. It's 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for those who want to join us next time, we do this Saturday, 10 p.m. CPT. That's 10 p.m. CPT every Saturday. And then on Wednesday, we do our Bible study, our Rightly Divided. We're going to focus on mind control. I have some materials that I wanted to share with everyone, including Transformation of America, which just recently came, as well as Bryce Taylor's Thanks for the Memories, and a couple of others. a few others. I've got about 6 really good ones that I wanted us to all glean something from so that we can be more efficient in that area of prayer and counsel. Okay? And so with that said, I'm ready to take it to bed. We prayed in the last live stream. I thank you all for joining. Thank you, Sister Christy. Thank you, Sister Ilona. Thank you so much for joining. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Sister Ilona was trying to ensure that I kept one of my potential promises when I had said earlier that I wanted to come back and do a reading last Sunday. But after I laid down that Saturday night, I slept most of Sunday away. So, and that's okay. But I'm glad that we had a chance to come back and do it tonight. Again, I appreciate folks who came out. I appreciate the folks who, anticipated the reading, who wanted to hear it. It made me feel glad to bring it to you. I was glad to bring it to you. And so, again, everybody who came, I thank you all. Thank you all. And yes, Sister Estelle H says, can't wait for Bible study. I'll be off from work that night. Good. Well, we hope to see you. Join us. And thank you, Sister Christy Joy. Good night, Cocoa Puffs. And good night, Kanga Kong. Matthew DeWard. Love you, brethren. Shelly Shakur. Peace and blessings to you, Sister Shelly. Asadi Giovanni. Appreciate you. Big Niece Jaira. Roti Dunnigan. Always good to see you coming in. You know, wants to take her just regularly. Okay. Sister Vanette and all the rest. Blessings to all of you. And may your rest be blessed. And thanks again to everybody who's just now dropping in as I'm dropping out. There's Sister Angel. Sister Angel, I'm so sorry that you just happen to be dropping in as I'm dropping out, but I have seen your messages, very intriguing messages and emails, and I will be getting back to you. Just please forgive me for my tardiness. Okay? Got a lot to do and only me to do it, so please forgive me if I'm behind on anything, or if you sent out an email and I've not replied yet. I will. Okay, I will reply. And I thank you all. And again, good to see you, Sister Angel. And God bless you and everybody else from the Matthew 24 and 24 crew. Time did seem to fly tonight, didn't it, Sister Ilona? A little taste. All right, y'all. Rhiannon B., love you. God bless. Shalom.